Hello, you're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we're going to discuss the situation in Ukraine as of April 8, 2025. Before we begin, I would like to sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. Let's start with the Sumy and Belgorod directions. Today, the most interesting news is coming from this area. So let's go through everything step by step. To begin with, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have established full fire control over the supply routes, over all the roads leading into the Sumy region. In this footage, we can see another ambush set up by Russian army units against Ukrainian vehicles, which were possibly conducting logistics operations or delivering ammunition at that moment. All this control serves one goal: to simplify the advance of Russian units in the direction of and around settlements such as Belovody, Unakivka, and of course the village of Oleshnya, Hornal and Gueva. Let's break it down and begin with the settlement of Loknya. As you can see, the map has undergone changes today, somewhat controversial changes, but let's go over them in detail. Today, Ukrainian sources published this video, and in the footage we can see close quarters contact between Ukrainian armed forces units and Russian fighters who had taken up positions in a building within the settlement of Loknya. In this particular episode, according to Ukrainian sources, several Russian soldiers were captured. The building was geolocated, and the battle took place in that area. This is very important footage that confirms that, at this moment, fierce fighting is taking place in the central part of Loknya between Russian and Ukrainian forces. Based on this, we conclude that the northern part of Loknya, along the Loknya River and up to the village of Basovka, appears to be under Russian control, a very significant advance. As you can see, the Russian army is closing the distance to Unakivka. This settlement is currently one of the main objectives of the Russian advance. The Russian army is also gradually moving closer to Highway H07, which connects Unakivka and Oleshnya, the latter being located in Russian territory. This is one of the last two settlements still controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces in that area. Regarding Oleshnya, today the official Telegram channel of the Northern Military Group reported ongoing battles for both Oleshnya and Hornal. As for the village of Oleshnya, there is little doubt about the situation there. It's quite clear. Over the past few weeks, the Russian army has been gradually closing in on the village, and the start of fighting for this area is a logical progression of the operation that has been unfolding since early April, possibly even since late March. A bit further south, near the villages of Gueva and Hornal, we see a noticeable shift on the map. This is how the map looks today. Again, it's worth repeating that the North Military Group reports an ongoing assault on Hornal. It's difficult to say exactly how the storming of Hornal is progressing, as there are still fairly large areas of open ground and forest between Gueva and Hornal. How Russian units managed to cross those areas is unclear, but today we have both geolocations and objective control footage, as well as posts confirming that all territories marked in red have come under Russian control. Perhaps they were taken yesterday or the day before, but today we have confirmation through new footage. Let's take a closer look at the Gueva area. Today, Russian sources once again published objective control footage. In the video, we see 2, possibly 3 or 4, Russian soldiers raising the Russian flag and the banner of the unit that participated in the fighting for the village. Based on this footage, we are not making any map changes because we had already marked the church area several days ago. Objective control footage from April 6th showed this from a rooftop. Perhaps the flag was placed using a drone on April 6th. It's hard to say, but ultimately it doesn't matter much, as both the Northern Group and neutral mappers report that by the end of April 8th, the Russian armed forces had taken full control of Gueva. Some pro-Russian sources report further advancement, with maps showing that Russian units have reached the outskirts of Hornal from the northeast, roughly following this path. We're waiting for geolocation evidence to confirm this before making map adjustments. For now, we'll leave the map unchanged. There is also new information from Ukrainian sources. In this footage published by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, we can see units of the 129th Brigade repelling another assault by Russian forces toward the state border. The video shows a drone placing minefields. Later, we see a convoy of Russian vehicles likely hitting those mines. This road has been geolocated. All the Russian equipment was advancing along this route between Gava and the state border. It was in this area that Russian vehicles were hit, so we can see that Russian units were moving approximately along this path from Gava. Once again, the way Ukrainian sources present this footage makes it difficult to fully understand the details. Was there a landing? Did they manage to get anywhere, to land? Again, based on the fact that there is no footage involving Russian units, there is a high probability that Russian forces attacked this large forest area, possibly landed on its outskirts, and maybe even established a foothold. Apparently, the map in this section of the front will be updated again soon, so we can see that the Ukrainian armed forces' defense in this area is clearly falling apart. Russian units are already approaching the first district center, the settlement of Unakivka. It's a key settlement, a major logistical hub, and from Unakivka, Russian forces may possibly continue their push toward the city of Sumy. Now let's move to the Belgorod section of the front, where fighting continues. Ukrainian forces have concentrated a large number of units here. Some sources report that around 6,000 Ukrainian soldiers are deployed in this area. But we can see that apparently a turning point has occurred, or is occurring, because today we received the largest number of geolocations confirming counterattacks by the Russian armed forces and adjustments of the front line in favor of the Russian army. Footage was published today from Mostovaya Street in the village of Demidovka. Here we see Ukrainian forces from the 225th Penal Battalion attacking possible forward positions of the Russian army within the village using FPV drones. The strike happened precisely at this location. Based on this footage, we have marked Mostovaya Street as being under Russian control. Some buildings may still be under Ukrainian control, and of course the forested areas south of Demidovka are still contested, with battles yet to begin there. There is also information from the settlement of Pokrovsk, where Russian units reportedly improved their positions on both the western and eastern flanks. Objective control footage shows Russian troops taking up positions in a building, likely preparing to repel upcoming Ukrainian attacks. Ukrainian forces in this direction include the 47th Mechanized Brigade. We can see Ukrainian units advancing from the west, while Russian forces are securing the eastern side of the village. Overall, this tactic resembles a pincer movement to encircle the settlement, and it's possible that during the nights of April 8th to 9th, Ukrainian forces will retreat toward the state border, into forested areas and toward water bodies, where they've likely been trying to establish at least some defensive lines to slow down the Russian advance. Next, we move toward northern Kupyansk. For the past 2 to 3 days, we haven't received any updates from the settlement of Kamenka. Perhaps heavy fighting is taking place there now, or maybe Ukrainian forces have sent reinforcements to stabilize the situation. In any case, this silence won't last forever, and we're likely to receive the first updates and control footage soon, which will allow us to make new adjustments. Currently, the main combat activity is focused around the village of Kondrashovka. Today, we received a large number of geolocations from pro-Russian sources. In all of them, we see artillery strikes targeting Ukrainian positions and trenches around the village perimeter. A serious artillery preparation is underway. Russian helicopter units are also operating, launching LMUR missile strikes on Ukrainian positions within the village. We're seeing significant activity from Russian units here, which contradicts claims by some experts that Kondrashovka is already fully under Russian control. At the moment, it appears the fighting may be occurring in the central part of the village, but no objective control footage has been published yet. Now let's shift to the southern Kupyansk front, or the Lyman or Siversk direction. Today, this area also saw many interesting updates. Let's go through everything in detail. We'll start with the Belgorod direction. As you can see, this sector had the most geolocations and map icons published today, all marked with flags, indicating that over the past 24 hours, the Russian army has expanded and strengthened its positions around the settlements of Novaya, Redkodub, and Novomikhailivka. To recap, yesterday, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the West group of forces had cleared the settlement of Katerinivka during combat operations. However, as of April 7th, no objective control footage had been released to confirm this. Today, pro-Russian sources released a long video, about 3 minutes, showing how the 144th Rifle Division conducted clearing operations in Katerinivka. The footage was geolocated, and we can see Russian soldiers raising a flag in that area. Specifically, it's the northwestern outskirts of Katerinivka, which suggests that Russian forward positions have already advanced significantly beyond that point, and the area is now considered relatively secure. Let's now discuss the map corrections proposed by different cartographic sources. First, let's compare the maps by date. This is how the map looked yesterday, at the end of April 7, 2025. And this is how it looks today, by the end of April 8th. As you can see, Russian units have cleared Katerinivka and reached the road junction at 0526, as well as a series of strongpoints located at the exit of the village of Novaya. At the moment, these areas are where the main fighting is taking place. This information was reported today by both neutral cartographers and pro-Russian mapping services. Neutral sources also report that Russian forces managed to enter and expand their control zone on the eastern outskirts of the village of Novoe. Just yesterday, reports only mentioned an entry into the eastern part. Today, however, we're hearing about the expansion of the foothold, suggesting preparations for further assaults westward. Additionally, control has reportedly been extended over the fields between the villages of Katerinovka, Novomikhailovka, and Novolyubovka. According to various neutral cartographers, these large territories came under the control of Russian forces by the end of April 8th, although no visual confirmation has yet been published. We now move on to the Lyman direction, where we're also receiving a large number of updates. We've been talking about the town of Lyman for quite some time, as Russian forces have launched an offensive there. Over the past few days, we've repeatedly discussed the entry of Russian units into the northern outskirts of the town, and today that information is beginning to be confirmed by multiple military analysts, both pro-Russian and neutral. In fact, today we saw the first changes reflected on reliable mapping sources. As of now, at least 50% of the settlement of Torskoye is marked under Russian control. Here's how the map looked on the evening of April 7th, and here's the updated version by the end of April 8th. Russian troops have reportedly taken half the town. Moreover, reports of advances in Torskoye started coming in early in the morning on April 8th, and it appears Russian forces continued their offensive throughout the day. There's a high probability that by tomorrow the Russian Ministry of Defense will announce the full capture of the settlement, and that combat will shift towards the village of Zarekhnaya. Next, we move towards the Siversk area, where the Russian army is also advancing. Today, new footage appeared, showing Russian troops attacking from the Belgorod area toward the village of Serebryanka, aiming to outflank Ukrainian fortified positions between Verkhne Kamenskoye, Siversk, and Grigorovka. This information was confirmed by both neutral mapping sources and video evidence. In the footage, we can see Russian units advancing under Ukrainian drone and artillery fire. Some of the scenes have been geolocated. According to this visual evidence, Russian troops managed to enter the forest belt in the area. It's likely they're now trying to expand their control zone and push further towards Serebryanka. The broader goal seems to be a push northwest to wedge between Ukrainian defensive lines and collapse the entire northern flank. We then move on to the Chasiv Yar and Toretsk directions, where there's also a lot of new information. Starting with Chasiv Yar, pro-Ukrainian sources today confirmed that Russian troops managed to gain a strong foothold in the northwestern part of the town, gradually tightening the noose around Ukrainian positions in the center. The Russian army continues to advance, and there's a very high likelihood that the contested or fog of war zones will soon be marked under Russian control, according to pro-Ukrainian sources themselves. Moving on to Toretsk, we received some of the most surprising footage. Let's break it down step by step. Today, cartographers continue to mark more of the settlement under Russian control. Currently, according to most sources, Russian forces confidently hold 70 to 80% of the town. Ukrainian forces retain no more than 20%. The Ukrainian army is gradually losing ground and retreating northwest toward villages such as Katerinovka and Klebanberg. And it was in the direction of the mine where we saw striking footage today, published by Ukrainian sources. The video is about 1 minute long and shows multiple drone strikes on Russian troops and vehicles. One segment was geolocated, showing a Ukrainian drone targeting a Russian saboteur trying to hide among trees. Based on this footage, it's likely that Russian forces are already conducting combat reconnaissance toward the mine complex, and more aggressive assaults may begin soon. If Ukraine loses control over the mine and the ventilation shaft, its forces may have to fall back all the way beyond the Kleban Bike Reservoir, potentially collapsing the entire defense line in this sector. We now move to the Pokrovsk front. Here as well, we received many important visuals. Starting with the village of Lisovka, today, Ukrainian troops from the 25th Airmobile Brigade released footage showing Russian soldiers moving through the northern part of the village. The footage reveals a heavy concentration of Russian units. Based on these visuals, most mapping services marked the area accordingly. In general, there's a consensus that Lisovka is now fully under Russian control. While pockets of Ukrainian resistance may remain, the trend and the recent map changes suggest a high probability that the Russian Ministry of Defense will soon declare the village fully cleared. Next, we move to the bulge between the settlements of Udakhnoye, Kotlino, Peshanoye, and Uspanovka. According to the latest data, Russian forces have stabilized the situation around this pocket. Today, footage was published showing Russian troops gradually counterattacking and regaining previously lost positions during Ukraine's recent counteroffensives. We've also seen footage from this industrial zone, a small cluster of buildings. Ukrainian FPV drones are striking Russian assault troops trying to secure positions in the area. As a result, some mapping adjustments were made. Previously, this zone was considered under Ukrainian control, but based on recent Russian counterattacks, it appears Ukrainian forces have lost it. This improves Russian positioning for an eventual assault on Kotlino, to fully reclaim ground lost during the Ukrainian offensives of February, March, and April 2025. Finally, we turn to the southern Donetsk direction. Over the past 24 hours, there haven't been many updates from this sector. We have some footage of FPV drone strikes targeting Ukrainian frontline positions and drone operators, but no major territorial changes. This may be one of the first days in a long while with minimal updates from this front. A similar situation is developing along the Zaporizhzhia axis. The Russian army has gone into deep defensive mode. Russian FPV drones continue to hunt down Ukrainian equipment, which is being gradually pulled into the region, possibly for a future counterattack. However, as you can see, neither side is currently risking a serious offensive. It appears the goal of the Russian command was to force Ukraine to redeploy reserves here for stabilization, and that objective seems to have been achieved. That's all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay connected.